Hey, what's going on? This is At the Letters presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer, and today is Thursday, April the 8th. My name's Arden Zwelling. Ben Nicholson Smith is with me. As always, our producer this week filling in for Christian Ryan is Matt Collins, and running the video this week, as always, is Mike Tassoni. Hope everybody enjoyed the first week of Blue Jays games, of MLB action. Ben, I don't even need to ask you if you enjoyed it because I know this has been a long time coming for you, my friend.
100%. It's awesome having baseball back. I find myself watching so many games. Like I watched the entire Angels White Sox series, and that was a great series. Obviously, Ohtani and Tim Anderson and Mike Trout. I mean, it's just incredible having baseball back. And I don't know about you, Arden, but for me, when I'm watching this, like it just goes from 0 to 60 so quickly because in spring, of course, I watched the Jays games to the extent that we could, but I didn't even realize this until the season started, but I don't care about spring training games. Like if the Angels, if the Angels and Rockies are playing a spring training game, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care. But then if the Angels and White Sox are playing a regular season game, I am dialed in. Like, give me that every single night I'm watching.
That's funny, man. Like, I did care a bit more about the Jays spring training games this year because you were seeing interesting players more so towards the ends of them. It was like, oh, hey, there's Austin Martin running out to center field.
Right.
And like, oh, hey, here's Elvis Martinez. And like, I frankly have not seen Elvis Martinez take that many plate appearances ever. And so getting to see him in that environment a little bit and getting to see like, oh, this is why people are so high on him. Like that gave it more interest for me. But yeah, I'm not going to be dialing up the MLB TV to watch anything out of market during spring. Certainly. I mean, that's even, sometimes a stretch during the regular season, but certainly not during spring.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure it'll wear off because it always does. And by the time May or June rolls around, like last night I was watching Rockies Diamondbacks and just like full on, like full attention watching Rockies Diamondbacks.
You have an issue.
Yeah, I definitely do. But that's, it's not going to happen like that in June or July, I don't think. But
there's a diagnosis
you never know
for what you have, and I don't know what it is, but you have it.
It's so good having baseball back, though. It is. And that includes the Blue Jays. It's so good watching the Blue Jays. It's so fun watching what they've been up to. I mean, there's a lot to discuss, even after just
Well,
one
let me ask you this then, because we talked a lot during spring about don't worry about the results, think about the process, look at velos and how guys are striking the ball and things like that. To me, I feel like that almost extends into the first week of the season, even though, the results matter now and the Blue Jays are 3-3 and that matters. Like those wins are going to be wins. Those losses are going to be losses. And Rowdy Tellez being 0 for 16 or whatever it is, like that is going to be on his record. And, Randall Grichuk off to a hot start, like that's going to matter. But how do you contextualize the first week of results that matter? Like how much do they matter? How much should fans look into them?
It's a good question, and to me, it's very specific to the player when it comes to how much it matters. Like in the case of Rowdy Tellez, you mentioned there, it doesn't change what I think he is or who I think he can be. It really doesn't. In the case of Julian Merryweather, I'd say my opinion of him in the last week has changed dramatically.
Really?
Like, like
But we've seen
I
it
think
before.
right now,
like we've seen the stuff. Like we knew it was there. We saw it last year. We've seen it during spring training. Like we've talked to people who have been telling us, like, "Hey, this guy's got lights out, electric stuff." Like we've known that for a while.
yes, we have, and so it's not a surprise when he comes out there and he has a great 4-pitch mix. But even compared to last year, the velocity is up. He's sitting 99 as opposed to 97, 98. And that difference counts. That's a move in the right direction. And furthermore, his command is better. Like his command is pinpoint right now. And I don't know if that's going to last. I mean, one presumes that there's some regression coming here for Julian Merryweather. But I just think like almost viewing it more so as, through like a scouting lens, right? Like you're watching the raw stuff. And I've talked to scouts, a couple of them, about Julian Merryweather, and they're like, this guy is unbelievable. Like this is incredible. And so I think when you are presented with that information, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm in. Like, I'm changing my opinion on Julian.
Yeah, I
Merryweather.
mean, my thing is, Blue Jays people have been telling us that for a long time. That like this guy's got
Right.
incredible stuff. Like he's just got to be on the mound to use it. But in side sessions and bullpens, like when we watch him throw, like there's a reason why they acquired him for Josh Donaldson, and that was the deal that they chose
Yep.
when they had a few like avenues they could have gone with the Donaldson transaction. They said no, we want Julian Merryweather because the stuff is that electric. So I guess I'm just not as surprised. Like I kind of always expected that he would be on, and even like last year in 2020, like he had really dominant outings. Like he looked really good as well. I'm not as caught off guard by
He
it, I
did.
guess, as everybody else is.
No, no, and I think that's fair. I mean, I said on ATL as they were entering, it was this like end of September, I want to say, that there was a case to be made that he might be their second most important pitcher behind Ryu because he was that good. And his stuff obviously was good then. The reason that my opinions changed in the last week is because A, the stuff is better, as I was just saying. It's actually improved compared to last year. And B, this is a guy who threw twice in spring. Like, he was a total unknown because of the health. So to go from total unknown, is he even going to be on the roster, like healthy enough to pitch, to now he looks like Justin Verlander for one inning at a time. And that's, we know it's not gonna keep up. And I'm not saying like, I don't want to be taken out of context here, but that's what he looks like. He's throwing 99 with the starter's arsenal. So yeah, I'm not predicting that it's going to last, but who I believe Julian Merryweather to be today as we record this is very different than what I would have predicted.
I'm still working on the comp myself. I don't know who the comp is for the guy. Like you said, starter's arsenal in high leverage spots, throwing 4 pitches effectively with 99 mile an hour fastball and like 79 mile an hour changeup
and command and presence. And
I haven't been able
composure.
to land on who the comp is for that.
It's a good pitcher, whoever it is.
But
it's not a scrub.
As far as first 6 games results, like I think you just have to put them aside and wait till we have some more data. That may seem obvious, but being a sports observer, an analyst, you're such a prisoner to the moment at all times and what is happening in exactly that moment when Rowdy Tellez doesn't look his best at the plate and when Randall Grichuk is barreling absolutely everything he sees. But like the way I would contextualize it is think back to even in 2020, right, which is a 60-game season. So the first 6 games of 2020 actually meant a whole lot more than the first 6 games of this season. But do you remember what guys looked like after 6 games of 2020? Like, do you remember how Randall Grichuk was striking the ball? Do you remember what Jordan Romano's first 2 outings looked like? Like, we don't remember those things when we get the benefit of a full season. So, you kind of have to remember that, like, what you feel right now based on what you've seen so far is going to change drastically, not just over, like, the next, 6 months, but over, like, the next 6 games after these ones.
Absolutely right. I mean, I think when you're talking about Grichuk, that's another perfect example of a case where, like, my perception of him has not changed one bit. He's playing really well. He deserves credit for that. Who he is as a baseball player, I haven't changed that in my kind of estimation of him. And absolutely, I mean, you look back at last year, one pitcher who had an amazing first outing in 2020 is Steven Matz. And we know how that ended, So these things can take a turn. Even when it starts really well, it can take a turn.
So now that we've established that all analysis is folly and pointless, let's spend some time analyzing. And let's start with George Springer, who is not going to be returning to the Blue Jays today, Thursday, April 8th. That's the Blue Jays home opener in Dunedin, which is a pretty crazy thing, by the way, that like is actually setting in for me today that there's going to be Major League Baseball games, like regular season games played in Dunedin, like this quaint little, town, like charming little place of 35,000 people. It's like if there were MLB games being played in Timmins, or like Bowmanville or something.
Stratford, Ontario.
It's But George Springer will not be in Dunedin as he's suffered a quad injury coming off of the oblique injury that he had earlier in camp, and it's a little bit of a trend across MLB right now. It's like a lot of early season injuries. You look at guys, you mentioned Tim Anderson earlier. He's on the IL now. Eloy Jimenez. We all saw the Fernando Tatis injury. James Paxton threw an inning and a third before going on the IL. Trevor Rosenthal. Saw Zach Britton. So on the big names. You know, we're not just talking about like depth guys. Like we're not just talking about down roster dudes. Like big names are on the IL. Josh Donaldson, across MLB, and George Springer among them. I guess the difference is he hasn't even begun his season. Like Ben, has your level of concern increased since with this development beyond your level of concern originally with just the oblique, or where are you at on it?
Yeah, I would say it's increased. I think it has to. If you're adding a quad into the equation, quad and oblique, not a good combination for any player. Quad, obviously, he needs it to run, to field. Oblique, he needs it to swing, to throw. These are very, very important muscles and areas for a baseball player, for a center fielder. So by all accounts, he was progressing well with the oblique. And we'll see where it leads with the quad strain. I mean, honestly, it's hard to really pinpoint because the Jays, as we've talked about before, I mean, it's really hard to get a read. They are the ones controlling the flow of information. They are perpetually optimistic about these guys. So they always say it's minor, and sometimes quote-unquote minor leads to 3-4 weeks. So you don't know what to believe. And I think if you're a fan, it's probably hard to know what to believe.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple episodes, I think. It's just kind of the skepticism now that is like, at that point I was kind of like leaning skeptical, and now I'm just all the way skeptical on whatever we hear, especially because it's been basically 2 weeks now of Nate Pearson's about to get back on a mound.
That's right.
He hasn't gone back on a mound. And like George Springer was like on the Zoom call with us talking about, I'm going to be pushing to get back. I feel great. Took a great step today. I'm feeling awesome. I can't wait to get back out there on the field. And then literally hours after that, he was going back into the MRI machine. So it's, it is what it is, man. It's pandemic ball, and we're away from the team. So that, like you said, they control the flow of information, and it's pandemic ball. A lot of guys are going to get hurt. The workload demands and the fluctuations coming off of last year and then coming into this season, ramping back up. I mean, managing health and managing workloads, I mean, that's going to be such a crucial separator this season for every team. Like, we've already gone over how important depth is, and like depth is important every year. But I do think that like the team that can best keep players on the field via managing fatigue, managing workload, and ultimately preventing injuries. And like that is the most imperfect science there is injury prevention. Like if the teams are all working feverishly, I promise you, to try to figure that out and try to square that circle. And it's like you just can't, because some of them are so random and fickle and unpredictable. But like one thing that clubs do know is that when athletes are tired and fatigued, they are more likely to get injured because they're more likely to put themselves into poor positions, or to just have a little bit of like just a second of mental fatigue, just a little lapse that makes them take the wrong step or the wrong movement, or just to not maintain their posture, and all of a sudden you've tweaked something. So I think that a lot of the different lineups that we're going to see from the Blue Jays, with players filtering through the DH spot, with, hey, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is getting a day off today, and Bo Bichette's the DH today, and now Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to get a day off. A lot of that is purposeful with the Blue Jays here on this 16 games and 16 days stretch, so that you don't have any more George Springer issues, so that you don't have Ke'Bryan Hayes issues, and Carlos Carrasco, and Brusdar Graterol. I mean, it's such a long list of players that have hit the IL already this year. So I think that a lot of that workload management and that fatigue management is going to be crucial for the Blue Jays during this stretch.
For sure. 16 games in a row, and you zoom out a little further, you're always in a stretch of 162 and 185. Always, right? Like, that's such a grind. There's so many games that these guys play in a very short period. So, of course, you have to work within that. It's kind of a side tangent. Like, I think I'm actually coming around to the idea, probably one that won't ever get traction, but to the idea of shortening the season to like 144 games. Just to give these guys more built-in rest. I actually think it would help. And their TV considerations and attendance and revenue, and I get that. But, I think from a player health standpoint, you just build in more off days, you might get a better product.
I think that every Monday should be off across MLB. And then you play Tuesday through Sunday. And maybe you even, like, every team gets, like, you're just in one place Tuesday through Sunday. So you limit the travel even,
right?
And you just rejig the schedule so that you're not, because that's a big part of it, is the travel, is how many day games after night games, how many flights guys are taking in between, going across
buses to
time
the
zones,
airport,
right? Like you get out of, you play a getaway day game, right? So 1 till whatever, 4 or 5 o'clock, you get right out of that. You got an hour or two after the game basically, and then you're on a bus, you're going to the airport, you're going through, the all that stuff at the airport. You're on a plane, you're flying somewhere, you're getting off the plane, getting to the hotel in the new city. You're not getting to bed until 3, 4 a.m. You're not sleeping. You're not recovering. You're not doing the things you need to do to like rebound from the stress you put on your body just a day earlier. And now you've already got another game coming right up that you have to go through again. So like that lack of recovery and that fatigue and stress that builds up, like that is a part of it. So anything MLB can do to lessen that, I think would actually improve the product in the long run.
For sure. I mean, like personally, and the travel we do is different than players because they're of course on charters. But Arden, you and I in a normal year would travel and do these little bursts where you're getting up and you're getting on a flight, you're getting in an Uber, like you're doing all this stuff to try to get to the right place on time. And removing that in the course of the last year, obviously because of the pandemic, removing that, like there are fewer days where I wake up and I feel like totally just destroyed. It's like, it's noticeable.
Oh, so. It's a grind, and you're not eating as well as you should be, right? Because it's particularly not us, but I'm sure even players in certain points like just aren't getting the right nutrition and the right sort of recovery supplementation that they need in order to rebound, right? You think about how destroyed we feel. Like we don't have to go out and perform for 3 hours every night, right? Like
we're writing, we're sitting at a keyboard,
right? And then you think about all the work the players do throughout the day as well. It's working in the batting cages, and they got gym workouts and conditioning they got to stay on top of, and meetings and all this stuff, right? Look, I get it. Like it's hard to get people to feel sympathetic for professional athletes, but like the grind of a professional baseball player, I think is just unlike any other in any other professional sport, really. And like just us being as close to it as we are, I feel like we get a unique perspective on just like how fatiguing that can actually be.
And this is all said in the spirit of improving the product. Like if the best product meant that players had to be tired, then I would probably advocate for that and say, all right, they're getting compensated for it. They have to be tired. Like, sorry, this is the way it is. I think that having the players less tired, though, would lead to a better product for the fans of the sport. And I think, when you think about the NFL as one example, where they play once a week and you still have so much anticipation, there's never a shortage of storylines. There's always something to look forward to, look back on. If they didn't play on Mondays, or if they staggered the schedule and every team always had a day or two off every week, it'd be fine. We'd still have a ton to talk about. We'd still have a lot of intrigue. Like there's going to be enough baseball.
There's a push-pull there, right, between the quality of the product and maybe lessening that quality a little bit to have more quantity of the product in order to sell, right? Because it's selling 162 games and 81 home dates whenever we do get, fans back in the stands and sold-out places again, right? Like all that revenue and all that money is going to be really tough for folks to give up in the name of, maybe G-Man Choi will be on the field a bit more, right? Maybe Kevin Kiermaier won't be hitting the IL in the first week of the season. But I agree with you, man. I think the product would be better, and I think that we'd see players at their best more often, which is really what it comes down to, right? I want to see George Springer play. Man, I want to see him running around center field for the Blue Jays and hitting the top of the order. Like, I want to see great players be great. I want to see Framber Valdez pitch for the Houston Astros. The ATL fans know I love that guy. So, like, I want to see players on the field performing. And I just think that, like, the injuries are going to, we've already seen so many of them in this first week, and there are 26 more weeks of the season. Like, we're not even 4% into the season yet. I just think we're going to see so many more injuries this year, and we're going to see this stuff really, really pile up.
Yeah, for sure. And, it is, for Blue Jays fans, I'm sure waiting for Springer. I mean, it's been a wait already, and I'm sure everyone's eager to see him. But like you said, it will be fun to see him. And in the meantime, Randall Grichuk has been doing well. He's been holding it down. That's why you have a guy like Randall Grichuk around. And in comparison to a couple of years ago where he more felt like they were kind of presenting him as this core piece. He's modeling the jersey with Vlad and Bo, and now he's a guy who can fill in really capably for Springer while he's still out.
And that's why the preoccupation over the Blue Jays have too many players for not enough roster spots was always ridiculous, as we said over and over again. At no point will they be in that scenario where they're like, everybody is a 900 OPS player and healthy, and there's 10 of them, and we only have 9 spots. There will always be somebody who's hurt, somebody who's banged up, needs a day off, somebody on the IL. There will always be somebody who's slumping, and somebody who, like, maybe you don't want in the lineup that day, and you want to, like, get a day off, even just mentally. Like, these things are going to work themselves out, as always. Let's shift off the field for our second topic in the first half here and talk about the general manager of the club, Ross Atkins, who got a 5-year extension this week from the Blue Jays. That'll keep him around through 2026, or at least he'll be contracted to be around for that long. Your initial thoughts on the extension of Ross Atkins?
Not a shocking move, considering that the Jays are in a good spot, and Atkins has said he likes it here, and Shapiro has said that he believes in the job that Ross Atkins is doing, and so certainly not a huge surprise or anything. But I do think it's significant when you think about general managers in the history of this franchise, and I think we've mentioned this before. But at the end of this term, assuming that Atkins is here for that full time, he will be the second longest tenured general manager in the history of the franchise, behind only Pat Gillick. So there's a big opportunity there in the course of the next 5 years. It looks like this team is going to be a good team that's competing, and that's in large part thanks to the work that Atkins has done with the farm system. Obviously, in the last couple of years, we've seen him sign Ryu, George Springer. It's a good team, It's a good team with a good farm system. It makes sense to me. Like, if you have a good team and a good farm system, you're probably not rushing to change leadership at the top. You're probably looking to build some stability and keep that in place and move it forward.
That's the key word, stability, honestly. And I would have said some similar things when Mark Shapiro got extended recently, is that you want stability atop your organization, atop any organization, not just baseball teams and not just professional sports franchises, any organization. You don't want a revolving door in leadership, because every new manager, every new supervisor, every new GM, every new president is going to have their own vision and their own values, their own way of doing things, their own principles, their own beliefs. And that takes a lot of time to enact. And it takes a lot of time for the people under you to kind of shift the way that they're doing business in order to, like, follow that lead. You think about these visions of, like, molding a franchise and like building something that all, MLB executives must have. Like, they have to have a plan. Ownership wants to know what you're going to do. Like, that stuff doesn't come to fruition overnight. Like, it takes a lot of time. So every time you bring in new leadership, like, you just knock yourself back. Like, you just kind of, like, reset, and you set yourself up for years and years of trying to build things. It's like there are exceptions, right? Like, Perry Manassian steps into, like, a franchise in LA where it's like, hey, you've got two of the best players in the world,
Yeah.
and Anthony Rendon, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there are exceptions, but I mean, generally speaking, these things take just a lot of time to come to fruition. It's like anything in life, right? Like, you just kind of, like, it's a slow burn. And when you have, like, a strategy, like, you have to kind of, like, progressively invest in that strategy and stick to it until the compound interest, like, starts to roll in. So, like, you just look at the best organizations across not just baseball, man, like professional sports, like San Antonio Spurs under Greg Popovich, or the Miami Heat under Pat Riley, Yankees under Brian Cashman, the Patriots under Bill Belichick. Like, you have stability in leadership, and that often can lead to success, particularly when you have, like, a clear plan to build something sustainable and renewable, which we know Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins have. They will tell you that anytime that you ask. So I think that it is good to have, that stability, and to have those two guys locked up for the next 5-6 years, rather than uncertainty and, like, a revolving door of new directions and visions every 4 or 5 years.
That's right. And in this case, the stability that they're locking themselves into it has borne some results, and so there is a demonstrated path that they're on. There's a vision that they've identified, which obviously was building up the farm system and player development infrastructure, getting a strong core of prospects, supplementing that from outside. And so they're in the process of doing that. We don't know where it's going to lead. We don't know that Atkins is going to lead this team to the playoffs this year or what the next 5 years look like. But we can say that we've seen that progress as far as the prospects, as far as the talent of the major league team. Both are in good condition right now. And so that stability, it's not just there for its own sake. Because, you could look at the Colorado Rockies and say, well, Bud Black, and Bud Black's not the problem there. He's a good manager. But you could say they've got, Dick Monfort's the owner, and they've got Jeff Bridich, who's been the GM. And all right, it's stability. But, stability for its own sake, it only gets you so far. And in this case, they have stability, and they also have some people who are advancing the interests of the organization in a demonstrated way.
Yeah, stability with poor executives probably isn't what you want.
It's not going to help you much. No.
But I think that Mark Spire and Ross Atkins to this point have demonstrated that they're strong executives and that their plan is coming to fruition. Like with all things, it takes patience, right? Yeah. And some of the vitriol that you saw in 16 and 17 and 18. And 19.
And 20.
was maybe
and 21.
20,
Arden,
right?
3 months ago, man. Do you remember what the discourse was like in January? They can't land anyone. 3 months ago, this is the discourse.
Yeah. Well,
it's
I
wild.
Feel like in 2020, things changed. They turned
a
little bit because people saw it because the team was winning, right?
And they signed Ryu too, which mattered.
Yes, and they played postseason games, right? So a lot people just need to see it to believe it a lot of the time, and I get it. People aren't as in the weeds with it as we are, right? So they just kind of need to see it in front of their eyes. They're just not as steeped into what's happening beneath the surface as people like us and probably some of the most hardcore Blue Jays fans are. For your casual consumer, it's what's the major league product, and it's oh, you're gonna lose 100 times in 19 or whatever it was. It's what you guys suck, right? I get it, but now you are starting to see it at the big league level. And it's not just in the young players. Everybody knows the core and everybody knows who has come up and impacted this franchise, but it's also in the external additions, right? It's in George Springer, Hyun Jin Ryu, as you mentioned. It's in Marcus Semien. It's in, the very clear communication that we have heard from Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins that we're not done and that we are going to dip back into free agency in a meaningful way next offseason. And you're probably going to see us make some trades in the near future that don't look much like the trades we've made previously. They look a lot different, where we're actually now shipping out young talent to bring in win now, so people are starting to get a much clearer look before their eyes of what the plan was meant to generate. So I just think it's just easier for fans now to understand the vision and to kind of buy in to what Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins have been talking about, because they're seeing the strategy right now just kind of materialize in the big leagues.
Absolutely. It's a much more fun time to be a Blue Jays fan. And by extension, it's, I think, a lot easier for fans to enjoy the work that's being done by the front office, because I think the ideal that at least, I think a lot of fans have, I might be wrong, but I think a lot of fans have this ideal of the GM who's the gunslinger, who makes moves, who goes out there, who wants to win, who's willing to give up some prospects and some future to win now. And the Jays are in that position now. So as they make those moves, befitting where they are as a franchise and, not, being reckless with it, then I think that that will endear, or maybe not endear, that's the wrong word, but that will help, as far as the perception goes of this front office. But ultimately, it's results. As with any team, it's all about results. And so far, the results look good for this front office.
Winning cures everything, man. It's like I said with Vlad, man. Nobody will talk about his defense if he just hits. It's like with Mark and Ross. Nobody's going to say Shackins anymore if they just win, and they won last year, right? And all of a sudden, a lot of that stuff went away because they were winning. And look, if going forward, if this is not a playoff contender over the next 2, 3, 4 years, if the Blue Jays are below 500 year after year, if they have glaring roster deficiencies in the coming years that are not addressed, then yeah, like these guys are going to be wide open to that criticism for it not working and for it not going well and for them not pivoting, at the face of like very clear evidence what they were doing was not working. And they'll probably lose their jobs.
No doubt.
That's professional sports. It's a results-based business. But like calling for them to have lost their jobs in the last 3, 4, 5 years was absurd and ridiculous and a mockery. Now is when you start wanting to see the results. Is 21, 22, 23, 24. Like these are the times when you want to actually see that, materializing in the big leagues, because it's not so much conceptual anymore. It's not so much laying the groundwork beneath the surface. From this point going forward, it really is about wins at the major league level.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And that's, it's not just prospect rankings. It's not just organizational infrastructure. And with Atkins, I mean, it's the big league team in the minor league system. I mean, that's the job of a GM. It's less so those off-field questions and direction of the franchise issues. But that's now shifting from, largely prospects to, hey, the prospects are important. They'll never not be important. But the major league team, the major league results, that's where the focus is.
Yeah, they're always going to have to develop. Like, just my last thing on this. Like, they're always going to have to produce homegrown talent because that is, like, the lifeblood of any successful franchise. Like, you look at the Dodgers, like, they didn't piece together all of that team by free agency and trade. Like, they have a ton of homegrown talent there. Even the Padres, who, like, did build a lot of their current roster via trade, that was by using the homegrown talent that they had that wasn't major league ready yet in order to acquire those players. So, like, that's where it starts. And it's really the most valuable commodity in this game is just, like, young, homegrown, like pre-MLB debut, high-end, high projectable, high potential talent. Like that really is it. The Blue Jays are going to have to continue to develop that. It'll just be a case of over the last like 2, 3, 4 years, we've been talking a lot about that development and about who they are bringing up because there hasn't been a lot to talk about at the major league level. The difference over the next 3, 4, 5 years is that there will be really good things, it looks like, we hope, who knows, but it looks like, at the major league level to talk about as a George Springer and a Hyun Jin Ryu and a Nate Pearson and Vlad and Bo and et cetera, et cetera. And then all that work can still continue beneath the surface to the point where it's like, oh, hey, like Jordan Groshans just turned up. We actually haven't thought about him or talked about him all that much over the last couple of years because we've been distracted with what's happening in the big leagues. And hey, this kid's pretty good. Like, oh, hey, Adam Kloffenstein is here now and he's got like 4+ pitches. Wow, that's pretty incredible. How did that happen? Like, it can just kind of happen quietly beneath the surface, and then you will continue to have this kind of internal source of talent to supplement at the big league level, or like, hey, we're packaging a Kloffenstein and an Aurelvis Martinez to trade for somebody who's going to come in mid-season and give us a boost and help us win at the big league level.
That's the dream. That is the dream for any front office. And now Atkins, we know, is going to be the one in place with the chance to make that happen.
That will be it for the first half of At the Letters. But when we come back, we will talk pitching and we will talk a whole bunch of other things when it continues on At the Letters. It continues on At the Letters. Arden Zwelling, Ben Nicholson-Smith. Our producers this week are Matt Collins and Mike Tassoni. And it is time now for Keeping It Light, presented by Miller Lite. And this week, Ben, I want to talk about a player that I think is close to all of our hearts because we all just want to see it happen. We all just want to see him succeed, and that is Shohei Ohtani, two-way player for Los Angeles Angels, and Blue Jays fans are going to get a good look at him this weekend because it looks like he's lined up to start against the Blue Jays on Sunday in Dunedin. And the cool thing about what Shohei Ohtani is doing this year is when he starts as a pitcher, he also hits like second in the batting order. That's going to be cool. Ben, I'm sure you watched it, last week or I guess earlier this week, whenever that was, when Shohei made his debut playing both ways, which was like the most eventful game of all time when you think about he's out here throwing 101 and then he's hitting 450-foot bombs and then he's limping out of the game after like a collision at home plate. It just had a little bit of everything, Ben. But what have you made of it so far?
It's incredible. It's totally incredible. Just that combination of skills. Like I forget who was saying this. It might have been the Cespedes Barbecue guys, but someone was saying like if he was able to go out there and let's say like even be as good as Trent Thornton as a pitcher and as good as, I don't know, like Joe Panic as a hitter. Like that would be impressive. Like it still would be impressive. That's a rare combination. But as a pitcher, he's throwing 101. As a hitter, he's hitting like 110, 115 mile an hour bombs into the deep reaches of the bleachers at Angel Stadium. Like he is so explosive. He is so athletic. He's stealing bases too. Like he's such a fast runner. You know this. You've written about him years back now. But it's truly amazing. It's so fun to watch him. He's just such an incredible talent. I think he's much more advanced as a hitter than he is as a pitcher. And as a pitcher, like he's pretty raw still. But it almost, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but like he's still effective as a pitcher. He's still not an easy at bat. So it's incredible.
Yeah, no, I can say that he is one of the most talented athletes you're ever going to see play this game. Maybe play any game for all the reasons that you just cited. And like he's just a true athlete, man. Like he's just a specimen. It was like, that's what stuck out to me. That's what I remember the most. You mentioned when I went to Japan, like when he was still an NPB and wrote about him, years and years ago. This is before he ever came over to MLB. And like, that was my biggest takeaway from meeting him was like, you're just a beast. he's just physically imposing. Like he's just built like if you built an athlete in a lab, he's just a really, really special talent. And if you can throw 101 as a pitcher, you are incredible and exceptional. If you can only hit, 115 mile per hour line drives as a hitter, you are exceptional and you are incredible and you are special. Well, he can do both. I guess the question, and this kind of gets back to some of like the fatigue and workload and injury stuff that we talked about in the first half, Ben, like, is it sustainable to do both? Like, is it possible to do so over 6-month seasons, year over year as you age?
I don't know. I love that they're trying it though, because they tried to be a little more cautious in recent years and didn't necessarily keep him on the field. He still battled some injuries. Now he, as you said, he's an incredible athlete. That's so obvious. He's just such a gifted athlete and works at it too. I'm not saying it's all just natural gifts. And so that combination is someone who is just in just the physical prime that a person could be. And so if anyone can do it, he probably can. I don't think it makes sense to put limitations on him. And I love that the Angels are going for it, of course, within reason. And I think Joe Maddon left him out there too long on Sunday Night Baseball. And, I think it makes all the sense in the world to rest him on Mondays after he pitches on Sundays. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's crazy to have him bat and pitch in the same game. I don't think it's crazy to have him hit 5 or 6 days a week and get 500 plate appearances. Like, I really want to see it happen, and I also don't think it's irresponsible. I think that's the right move by the Angels, to be honest with you.
I desperately want to see it happen. I just want to watch. I want to see him do both, man. And I want to see if it works, man. In 2021, of all years and of all points in human history, like, we should have an advanced, like, scientific, data-driven way of managing this, and we should be able to the best of our abilities, keep this guy on the field. I just want to see the case study. I want to see them try and learn from their mistakes and find better ways to do it going forward, because I hope he's not the last guy, right? Like, I hope he's not the only guy on the planet who can do this and who can play both ways at such a level, because, like, look, more than anything about sports, like, I just love seeing incredible athletes. Like, I love that competition. I love seeing the best athletes in the world doing amazingly athletic things like that. I don't so much care if the White Sox win or the Padres win or the Angels win or whoever. Like, I just like seeing great athletes be great. So let's see Shohei Ohtani be great. Let's see him try to do it. Like, I will, I'm not going to lie to you. I can't deny that I have my doubts about the workload and about it potentially just being too much, particularly as he ages. Like, it's one thing now in his mid-20s. I mean, by the time he's 30, we'll see. Particularly just considering, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, just the amount of stress on his body, because it's not like he's out there soft tossing on the mound like Mark Burley, and it's not like he's like a D Strange Gordon type of hitter, right? Like he'll slap singles or whatever. Like everything that he does has an incredible amount of force and an incredible amount of power and so much energy just surging through his body with every pitch and every big swing. So there are so many things that can go wrong, and there are so many ways that he could be injured when you consider just how hard he plays this game. So I guess I'm just hedging right now, because I'm just sadness hedging about what might be inevitable. But let's see him do both. I want to see him do both, and I will just enjoy it for as long as it lasts.
Right, because I think if the question is like, can he do this for 10 years? My answer is an emphatic no. It's just a no. If the question is, can he do it this year? Yeah, I actually think he can. And it almost, I don't know why, but my mind right now is going to Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, and it's like those guys, for whatever period of time, it wasn't long, but late 80s for Jackson, early 90s for Sanders, they were able to do some incredible things in football, even more high impact, even more high intensity than baseball. And those guys were able to do that. Brian Jordan's another one, in combination with their baseball responsibilities, and do it well. Those guys had stretches where they were impact players. And so it takes a special athlete to do this kind of thing. And it's funny, that Jared Walsh of the Angels is kind of on that fence, and he's not pitching anymore. But some guys can do it or attempt it. Lorenzen with the Reds is another. But Ohtani's the best of all, and I hope we see it for as long as we possibly can.
Let's get back to the Blue Jays now and clean up some odds and ends. And first of all, I just want to say right now, we are going to learn from mistakes of the past. We are going to turn the page right now, and we are never going to do the following again. We are never going to spend 6 weeks of spring training talking about the 27th and 28th guy on the roster. We are going to call it the Reese McGuire rule. You could call it the Breivik Valera rule. You could call it the Derek Fisher rule. You've probably got other names coming to mind of like just the guy that we spend all spring talking about, who is like out of options on the roster bubble. What are they going to do? Are they going to prioritize roster, asset management? Or like, is he going to make the team? Like, he's playing for his job, this, that, and the other. Here's the like honest truth about that guy. If that guy was a better baseball player, we wouldn't talk about him at all, because his spot would be secure and he would just be a big leaguer. And because he was a big leaguer, he would be completely overlooked, because there is no pivot point there and there's no decision to be made. But because there is like a looming decision with guys like Breivik Valera and Reese McGuire, who are out of options, we end up talking about them endlessly because there's nothing else to talk about. And then ultimately, as predicted on this very podcast by Ben Nicholson Smith, it does not matter. In the end, it is moot. It is a complete waste of everybody's time, because both players pass through waivers, Ben, and both players remain in the organization. All that time, all those like keystrokes that we punched, all the words that we said about Reese McGuire and Alejandro Kirk and this decision and what are they going to do, and here's this case and there's that case, it didn't matter in the end at all.
I know. It's kind of funny, right? And it is like we foreshadowed it with the Dalton Pompey. We're like, you know what?
Dalton Pompey, that's the other one. That's another one. Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, I wonder, maybe he actually just would clear waivers. And then, of course, all 29 other teams say, they all say we have 40 players that we would prefer to have on our 40-man roster than Reese McGuire and Breivik Valera.
No, Ben, they need to carry 3 catchers for the first couple of games and then sneak him through when it's going to be more likely that he gets through waivers a couple of days into the season.
You don't need that level of gamesmanship when it comes to some of these players. No, you're right. Like I love baseball. Decisions are the best. That's why we like trades. That's why we like free agency. It's decisions. They're so fun, right? Like you have to make this call. Do they move ahead? Do they switch? Do they pivot, as you say? And some of these decisions are so low stakes that, as you say, maybe they deserve a little less oxygen than they get.
Never again, Ben. Never again. What's so wait? So there's 30 teams with 40-man rosters. So 30 times 40
1,200.
is 1,200. So like what we have learned in the past week is that neither Reese McGuire nor Breivik Valera are among the top 1,200 players in affiliated ball.
That's right.
Why?
That's right.
Why? All that time. Why? Let's talk about an actual big leaguer in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. who looks brilliant. Who, like, every ball that he touches with his bat is exploding off of his bat. The progress is real, and the breakout so far is real. And you can rewind this podcast by about 25 minutes, and I'll tell you that the first 6 games, the results, like, you will hear me saying, like, yeah, don't read anything into them, and you shouldn't take too much away from it, but the exit velo that you're seeing for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and the launch angle that you're seeing and the line drives, the way that he is striking the ball, that process is real. And that is everything that you wanted to see as the Toronto Blue Jays from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to begin the season.
No doubt. Yeah. And exactly. It's like you say, it's the exit velo, right? It's not like he's hitting these little, ground balls through the shift and he legs out a double or something, or, it's a dropped fly ball between 2 outfielders and, there's another double for Vladdy. Like, he's squaring up the baseball. His takes seem good. His composure at the plate, his plan, to the extent that we can ascertain that from afar, seems to be good. You can see he's not chasing these sliders off the plate. He does seem to be getting. Joe Settle had a great segment of this on Blue Jays Central recently, where you can kind of look at the way that Vladdy's using his body, loading up his swing to make sure that he's making hard contact, and that does connect to the physical shape that he is in.
Yes. 2 things on that. Number 1, great point about the plate appearances, which have looked fantastic. Like, he's laying off of pitches outside the zone. He's not chasing crap. He's still getting calls that aren't going his way, but if a call doesn't go his way, he isn't, like, expanding on the next pitch. Like, he isn't getting frustrated and coming out of his approach and his plan. He's sticking with it. That's maturity. That's growth right there. If he sticks with this vision and this discipline, if he keeps making the swing decisions that he's making, look out, man. Like, if he sticks with that approach, that's huge. Number 2, you're right. Siddle did a great segment on that, and, like, the conditioning improvements are very real. But let me make a point here that I want to get your take on. I think the conditioning improvements are showing up more in how he is practicing than how he is playing. And let me explain that to you. There was a quote from Vlad this spring that, like, shot alarm bells off in my head when he said, back when I wasn't as well conditioned and I was carrying 42 more pounds, whatever it is, I used to get tired taking ground balls, and I would get fatigued swinging in the cages. And, and now I don't get fatigued taking 100 swings. Now I don't get tired taking 50, 60 ground balls. In my head, that was like ding, 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 because, like, look, a baseball swing, like, is a tremendously technical action, right? As an athlete, like, when you're in the cages and when you're taking flips and BP and hitting off a tee, you're working on technique. You're trying to build motor patterns and movement patterns and muscle memory so that when you're in the game and it's a 98-mile-an-hour fastball or a wicked slider from Garrett Cole and you only have, like, half a second to react, you are just reacting, and you are going back to that muscle memory and to that technique, and to that movement pattern. Well, if you're practicing fatigued, if you're tired while you're training that technique, your technique's going to suffer. It's going to get worse because you're going to be in poor positions because you're tired. You're not going to be repeating the mechanics that you need to. The mechanics that Joe Siddle very well illustrated in that video that's at sportsnet.ca. You're not going to be repeating the movements you need to. You're actually going to be learning poor movement patterns and instilling the incorrect muscle memory because of how tired and fatigued you are. And then that'll show up in a game when you're naturally doing something with your swing that you shouldn't be doing, and now all of a sudden you're hitting every ball into the ground. So I think that conditioning, those improvements, I think it's showing up more so outside the game and how he is practicing and preparing, and then that is being carried into the game where he is just executing a lot better.
Yeah, I think that makes sense for sure. And, he is still such a young player, and so there was always the occasion or opportunity for him to make this adjustment. But with Vladdy or with any player really, you have to see it to believe it. I'm not going to sit here and just assume my way into Vladdy, the All-Star. I mean, I guess I have done that before, but I
3 years running, buddy.
Yeah. It's probably, yeah, that's true. So it's probably not the most prudent way to go about things. But now what we're seeing change approach, a change in his swing, a change in the way that the ball is leaving his bat, and that, again, doesn't guarantee anything going forward, but it's certainly got to be encouraging for the Blue Jays as they take stock of a player who's every bit as important to the future of this franchise as anybody on this roster.
I just think you got to remember that, the swings that we see in a game are less than 5% of the swings a guy takes in a day. That extends to first base, where Vladdy's looked pretty good picking balls out of the dirt. Maybe we can get into this in a minute. Some of the erratic throws that he's had to handle there at first base. He looks more flexible and he looks better around the bag. Well, hey, he's not tired when he's practicing that stuff anymore. He's not fatigued. He's actually making gains and actually installing good movements and good muscle memory and good movement patterns now in his practice with Luis Rivera at first base, instead of, as he has said, after 40, 50, 60 ground balls, feeling tired and feeling fatigued and feeling like he doesn't want to be doing that anymore. Now he's getting better, and that's showing up in games. He's looked pretty okay at first base. We haven't seen too many of those decisions that he has to make on balls to his right, and we haven't seen too many of those sort of pop-ups, towering pop-ups in foul territory, which sometimes he has misjudged. But we have seen him need to adjust to a lot of erratic throws from third base and from shortstop. He's done a pretty nice job of it. What have you made so far of not only Vlad's play at first base, but also some of the erratic infield defense that we have seen on the left side?
Yeah, I think Vladdy looks okay. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not impressed. I'm not concerned. I think he looks okay. Yeah,
you'll take it.
I don't know. Yeah, I think I again, going into the year, I didn't expect him to field well because I've never seen him field well. I've never seen him be a good defensive player at all.
I'm not trying to say he's Justin Smoke.
No,
he is saving some errors with his play at first
and
base.
he's made some good picks. No doubt. He's made some good picks, to his credit. I think if you put a good or average major league first baseman in that position, they should be saving you some throwing errors. They should be picking some balls. That's why they're defending instead of playing DH. That is their job. And so, with Vlad, yeah, I've seen good defensive skills from him. Obviously, he has a strong throwing arm. Obviously, people say he has good hands, and so at times we've seen that. But I'm not super impressed with him defensively. I'm not super down on him defensively. Kind of neutral. And then Bo defensively hasn't looked great to me, and Cavan too. I think the left side of the infield leaves something to be desired right now. What's your read?
I think that I need to see more. I think there's only been 6 games, and I need to see more. I need to see if those guys settle in. I agree with you. There have been some shaky moments. There have been some inconsistent throws, and those are things that you can address. And I think more so than anything, you really can continue to develop defense at the big league level. You know what I mean? It's pretty hard to continue developing as a hitter. When you see guys make massive adjustments as a hitter at the big league level, it's super impressive because of how hard that is. I think as a defender, you can still make quite a few gains in seasons. So
look at Marcus Semien and his progression from White Sox to A's to shortstop to second base. He wasn't good when he came into the league, and he got to be a good defender.
He had over 30 errors as a shortstop in his first full season as a shortstop. And now this is the guy everybody's pining for to be the Blue Jays shortstop, because those are the improvements that he made. That's the development that he executed. At the big league level, it's tremendous credit to him, to how hard he works. So I need to see this kind of progress over the season. I will say for 2021, this is what it's going to be. This is your infield, barring, some sort of massive mid-season trade. So this is your infield. So you're going to see what it is. And look, if Bo Bichette plays himself out of shortstop, you'll live with that, because you gave him the opportunity, you gave him the chance, you gave him all the tools and the resources, and he worked really hard at it. Didn't work out. Okay, he's just a second baseman who's leading the league in hits, right? That's fine, and you can go and get a shortstop from the massive class of shortstops hitting free agency next year. You can immediately upgrade that position. You can figure that out. If Cavan Biggio like isn't an everyday third baseman, he can go back to being a utility player and a guy who moves around, right? Like, we'll see how these guys, how their careers progress. I'm not going to draw any conclusions off of the first 6 games that we've seen, but I am going to obviously monitor it as the season goes on. I just feel like 2021 is going to be a year where the Blue Jays kind of figure out what they have on the infield and where guys are going to fit long term, and then they will take the information that they have gleaned and gained in 2021 and make decisions going forward for 2022 as to whether players need to move positions, as to whether you need to go and aggressively pursue a Correa or a Story or a Seager, and as to, how a Jordan Groshans might fit in if he's a third baseman, as to where Austin Martin might fit in. I think the Blue Jays are just going to gather that information this year and then make some real impactful decisions the following offseason.
For sure. And I think when going back to that discussion off the top about what we can take away from the results so far and what we can't, none of what I've seen so far from Vladdy or from Bo or from Biggio changes what I think, which is that they're certainly capable of being at the major league level and getting that chance. And then in the course of this coming season, the Blue Jays will find out a lot more, like you're saying, about how these guys do, because small samples apply on defense too. We haven't seen the full range of challenges for these guys. We haven't seen how they respond to that full range of challenges defensively. And so let it play out and we'll see where he leads. And at this point, it's been okay, and we'll see where it goes.
4 pitchers to touch on before we wrap up on ATL. Let's start with Merryweather, because we kind of started this conversation a little bit off the top, but I feel like a little bit of an interesting fork in this guy's career right now, with what he has shown out of the bullpen, saving games, the de facto closer, although we'll kind of see where his opportunities come going forward. But it's easy to forget Julian Merryweather spent this past offseason preparing to be a starter, and he came into spring training with the Blue Jays intending to stretch him out as a starter and use him as a starter, or at least use him as more than a 1-inning high leverage air it out reliever. And you can see why, the 4-pitch mix and what he can do on the mound, and obviously the command. If you get a starter out of this guy, that is way more valuable than if you just have a guy who only throws an inning at a time. But obviously health concerns with him throughout his career. There's a reason he's a 30-year-old rookie. Obviously, roster concerns for the Blue Jays. Where can he impact you now? Best now. Where does he fit best now? What makes the most sense for not only him going forward, but for the franchise going forward? It's funny, man. Usually we have these sort of conversations about 23-year-olds about, do you keep trying to be a starter? Do you keep going back to that well, or do you just sort of leave well enough alone and let him be a lights out reliever? Well, we're having that conversation now about a 30-year-old rookie. What do you think the Blue Jays should do?
Just let him stay in the bullpen. Don't overcomplicate it. He's so good there. You don't need to try to get 7 innings out of this guy. Of course, if there was a guarantee of health, if you could offer Ross Atkins, there is a guarantee that he is going to stay healthy, it's just a question of how you use him, then of course he's in the starting rotation tomorrow. He's throwing 7 innings every 5 days, and he's pitching 200 innings and getting Cy Young votes. He's good, and that's what you do. But you just don't have that guarantee, nor should you tempt fate by trying to push him further in that direction. Just take what you can get. He's an incredible reliever right now. Don't even assume that he's going to be still healthy in June. That's a dangerous assumption. He's good right now. He's lights out right now. He might be hurt in May. We don't know. But right now, he's incredible as a reliever. So in my opinion, just take it and use him as long as he's healthy.
I think for this season, he remains in the role that he's in. Personally, I wouldn't mind if you could get him stretched back out to that 2-inning role, and not even 2 innings, that 6 to 9 batter role, that one trip through role that we've seen. Because what's better than Julian Merryweather just blowing away 3 Yankees in the 9th? Julian Merryweather blowing away 7 to 9 Yankees in the 5th and 6th, in my opinion. So I would love to see him get back to that situation, because then it just opens up so many more avenues, right? You can use him as an opener. You can still use him at the end of games. You can use him in the middle of games. He's just become such a more useful tool. But I certainly do, I am very sympathetic to the argument of hey man, it's working. What you got right now, maybe just like let him be and let him be settled. Because like think about, you know, what this guy has had to go through in terms of preparing for different roles, right? Like he's been a starter his entire life, and then last year he's pitching out of a bullpen and pitching in that role that I was just describing. This offseason works to prepare himself physically and mentally to be a starter, comes into spring assuming that, and now all of a sudden he's a closer, right? Like, you know, talk to like Ryan Baraki and Thomas Hatch about how difficult the adjustment can be, you know, in terms of how you prepare and what your routines are like, what your mentality is like in between outings when you know, between these disparate roles. So, you know, Julian Merryweather would be benefited by having some certainty as to, you know, how he should structure his routines and how he should sort of program his workload outside of like what we see on the mound in games. Which is all to say, I don't know what the Blue Jays are going to do going forward, but I would like to see him get back to that role that he's filled last year.
Yeah, getting a little greedy there, but I like it. I understand. I think
Blue Jays are getting greedy by trying to make him a starter.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
You want to talk about greedy? That's really greedy.
Yeah, no, I know, and I am not immune to that either. You know, even projecting or just, you know, looking at how good he is, it's impossible not to be a little greedy. And so let me along those lines, let me be greedy 6 months from now and assume, which is a dangerous assumption, but assume that he is healthy and the Blue Jays are in a wild card game or in the playoffs. And this is the kind of arm that you need. This is the kind of arm that you can put out there against the best lineups in baseball. We just saw it, right? We saw it against the Yankees. The proof of concept is there. They are one of the best lineups in baseball. He dominated them. So that's the kind of thing that you need if you're going to succeed in October. That exists. Now it's only a question of, can the Jays make it and can he be healthy? Which those are two big questions. But the proof of concept exists. This guy's stuff plays against the best hitters.
And with health, like, I really don't know which role lessens the chance of injury, right? Like, you think about, like, as a starter, there is more certainty in your routine, but obviously, like, larger overall workload, certainly larger workload per appearance. As reliever, you know, shorter stints, less overall workload, less workload per appearance, but higher intensity in those appearances and far more erratic usage, and it's not as predictable when you're actually going to be, you know, in on a mound in a game. So I really don't know, like, which role lessens the chance of injury.
I think it would be reliever, just because the way starters are used now, they almost have to go max effort anyways.
That's fair. Yeah.
So that would be my lean, but that's a non-scientific guess.
Steven Matz, pretty impressive in his debut, and I think you maybe tipped your hand earlier in the podcast when you said, hey, you know who had a pretty good first outing in 2020? Steven Matz. But look, as Blue Jays, like, you cannot be upset with what you got from Steven Matz at the returns one outing. You're going to need to see it more, obviously. You're going to have to see it repeated, but, I mean, stuff was on point. He was in the zone, locating, had command, didn't let things spiral when things got tough, which is a big thing for him. You look at, like, last season, a lot of his runs came in the span of a very small, like, amount of innings. Like, I think I wrote it. It was like 40% of his runs came within, like, 3 innings pitched. You know, like, he has had some real disastrous innings where things just spiraled and got really bad on him. Didn't happen. You know, on the mound in his first Blue Jays appearance. You have to be cautiously optimistic, Ben, with what you've seen.
Yes, I think without a doubt. I think anytime a pitcher comes out there with increased velocity, with a willingness to attack the strike zone, with 9 strikeouts in a major league game, that's only a good thing. And of course, it's going to take more than one outing for me to be fully convinced. I think that's only natural, only logical at this point in the season. But I mean, that outing was best case scenario, right? Like, there was nothing more that, I mean, I guess he could have been throwing harder or whatever, but that's pretty much as good as it could get for what you were hoping for from Matz if you're the Jays.
Let's talk about Tanner Roark, and then we'll end on something positive with Hyun Jin Ryu. But with Roark, first of all, obviously did not have it in his first outing of the 2021 season, and I make no bones about it. He was downright uncompetitive in that outing against Texas, and you could see it in the process. Like, you could see it on the mound that this was a low 90s fastball and a cutter that was not moving, and he was, with the fastball like missing way off the plate or right over the heart of it, and he was getting rocked, man. Like just, screaming liners coming off of bats, 3 home runs in 3 innings. Like his performance was not of an MLB standard in that outing. And yet, I would argue he should get another.
Yeah.
Would you?
No, I agree. I agree. I think you're right. I think, it's just too long of a season. If they played 3 times a week, it would be different, right? Then no. But they play 6-7 times a week. Like there's so many innings that you need covered. And so each pitcher who has a track record of covering those innings, I mean, if he's there, if he's yours, you want to take a look and find out, can he be a piece? And maybe the answer is no. Like, I think that's a possibility that any clear-eyed Blue Jays fan, Blue Jays executive, of course, you have to be open to that possibility that he might be done. But are we willing to say that after one outing? Like, I'm not there. I'm not willing to say that after one outing. But after 2 or 3, I might be willing to.
Yeah, no, I'm not willing to say it after one outing. We've seen too many times, pitchers just don't have it for whatever reason on a given night. Considering the track record, considering, and this is like part of it, the $12 million salary, considering the like need for innings this year of every club, and just like how like much game time, how many innings are going to have to be eaten, how much you have to cover. I think you give him another opportunity. Like here's what I think you do. I think you give him his next start, and you have a contingency plan in the bullpen, whether it's Tommy Malone or it's Anthony Kay. Like you have somebody there ready to go in case things go haywire. Tanner Roark
ready
takes
to go
the
at
mound.
5.
Yeah, exactly. Tanner Roark takes the mound. If he's good, great. Carry on. If he's mediocre, you probably live with that because you need the innings. If he looks the way that he did against Texas, you're getting him out of there early. And you're yanking him before things get too bad. You're bringing in your Malone. You're bringing in your K. And after the game, you are sitting him down and you're talking to him and you're saying, look, we're going to IL you. And I promise you he has some inflammation or some fatigue. I promise you they can find a reason to do it. And you let him go away for 4 to 6 weeks. And you let him just like recalibrate mentally, decompress, try to make some gains, strength and conditioning wise, and try to make some progress in bullpens away from competition. And then you bring him back some point in May, early June, whatever, find a soft spot in the schedule. You bring him back, you give him another shot at that point. And if he's bad again, if he is that quality at that point again, then you look at releasing him. But now is not the time.
I agree. I agree with that. I think that's, you're probably one start away from a phantom IL at this point. And the IL, I mean, the reason you would do that instead of a straight release is because if something, like let's say, because it could happen, Hyun Jin Ryu takes a line drive off his shin and he's out for 4 weeks recovering, not good. You need innings, and so that's why you would keep him around just in case. And then if this continues, he's got a 7 ERA in late May. At that point, it's a sunk cost. You move on.
Yeah. To be clear, like if what we saw from him in his first outing is what it's going to be this year, then that doesn't get anything more than 2 or 3 starts. To be clear.
He threw, I think it was 20 fastballs, 0 swings and misses. And that's against a bad hitting team. Like now, like we saw that the Blue Jays preferred TJ Zoik over Tanner Roark, and they would never say this publicly, but like reading between the lines, kind of can see why you wouldn't have wanted Stanton and Judge and LeMahieu and Gleyber Torres teeing off against that stuff.
Yeah, and so if that's what it's going to be, like at that point, you might as well DFA him and let Joey Murray go, right? Or like let Anthony Kay take the ball and run with it, right? Yeah. Get Nick Allgaier, man. Like there's guys in this organization that you could go to. Seriously, who would be, I think, better than what Tanner Roark showed against the Rangers. Yeah. I am just willing to give him the benefit of the doubt right now based on the track record and based on what he's done over his MLB career. And look, the Blue Jays have more information on this than any of us, right? So if they have reason to be confident in Tanner Roark, like they have that reason. I just think the calls for him to be like released and banished and sent to the land of wind and ghosts, I just think it's a little premature. I think if we see another couple outings like that, absolutely. but not after just one outing is my point.
He's got a long track record. He was a pretty good, very serviceable pitcher from like 2014 to 2019, and that's 2 years removed. So it has been a while, and a lot's changed since 2019. But it's worth another look, in my opinion.
Yeah, no. If there's a possibility of getting league average, even somewhat below league average innings out of him, like you're gonna need those. You got, like, the Blue Jays played 6 games. They got 156 games remaining. It's like 1,400 innings, dude. Like, somebody has to eat them. Somebody's got to pitch these innings. So there would be value in a, like, 5 ERA Tanner Roark throwing 100 innings for you, you know? So if that's still in there, which isn't the highest standard, honestly, like, then you'll take that, even though you'll be overpaying for it. You'll take that.
I mean, yeah. The question is, can he even be replacement level? Really? Like, they'd take a 5.25. Really? Like, the standard is not super high.
You know who the standard is high for, and I want to end on this guy because he has just been so quietly dominant, is Hyun Jin Ryu. The standard is so high for him. And whereas Tanner Roark was really uncompetitive against the Texas Rangers, Hyun Jin Ryu was like dominant that day. He had some results go against him and he gave up some contact, but like, holy crap, his stuff was good on that day. Like, as you know, and I've been watching him like pretty closely, for the last, he made 12 starts last year, so like 14 starts now. That might have been like as good as I've seen him, man. He was carving, painting. It was like 17 swinging strikes. Like, I'm sure the quality of the Rangers batting order had something to do with it, but like, man, he looked good. Hyun Jin Ryu is just like quietly such a bastion of stability for this team and for this rotation. And to me, like the most irreplaceable player on this club, more so honestly than George Springer right now.
Yeah, he's been so good for this team, and I think all that's fair. And as much as the Rangers, they're really not a good offensive team. But you look at what he did in his first start against the Yankees, who might be the best offense in baseball. Yeah. And he had these guys, like, it was really remarkable to me how he's throwing 91. He still doesn't throw hard, but he's throwing 91. And he just has the Yankees hitters late on 91 because they're geared up or geared down for the changeup. They're trying to balance against all of his different arsenal. And so they're constantly late on his fastball. It's remarkable. It is a proven skill set that works for him year after year at a time that all these other pitchers are throwing harder than ever. He gets by with command and movement and guile, and he's so much fun to watch. It's really been a great start to the season for Ryu.
Yeah, his patterning is elite, his unpredictability. And that's how he ends up with that many swinging strikes, because it's not like he's just working to get to one pitch and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get 8 swinging strikes with my changeup today or something like that. Like against Texas, it was like 6 swinging strikes with the changeup, 6 with the cutter, a handful more with the 4-seamer, a couple with the curveball. Like, it's any pitch and any count, and it's hitters being uncomfortable and having their timing disrupted and the bats sped up and slowed down. And it's got to be a miserable, uncomfortable day as a hitter. With Ryu, and this is a nice way to kind of wrap up the podcast, the workload and fatigue management podcast, as it were. How do you manage this guy this year, Ben? Because he is so crucial to this club, and we've seen in recent seasons, like, he's often pitched on a 6-day turn rather than a 5-day turn. He's often had that extra day of rest, and you can understand because the injury history is a significant one with him. I mean, obviously he didn't hit the IL in 2020, but that was very much the exception to the rule. Like, you look throughout the years preceding that with the Dodgers, and it's groin injuries and hip problems and foot and shoulder and glute. And I mean, he's had all kinds of issues. So the Blue Jays need to be very careful with how they manage his workload going forward. How do you, Ben, kind of chart out his season? How often are you trying to steal him an extra day?
I try to do it pretty often. I think I'm not in the game of skipping starts or anything like that, but I would try to build in a 5th day of rest pretty often for you, like almost at least as often as not, to be honest with you, because to me, the goal isn't just to get through the season. If you're like, the goal is to win the World Series, right? That's very clear for this team. So for this franchise. So that means, okay, what does that look like? What does that look like if the Blue Jays are actually winning the World Series? Well, Ryu is probably starting 2 games in the ALCS. He's probably starting 2 games in the World Series. And, because like, I just don't see, it's really hard to imagine another way for that to unfold. So he's starting, that's 4 times in the last 2 weeks of October, and he's good in those games too. Because if they're winning, that he has to be good. So you need him really healthy at the end of October. I don't know, man. Like, I don't think you get to that point by just grinding. Hey, he feels pretty good now. Like, let's just, ride him every 5 days. Like, I think you got to build in that rest.
No, absolutely. I think you got to find strategic locations for a Anthony Kay spot start and a, when he's healthy, a Thomas Hatch spot start. Like, this would be a lot
Bullpen
easier.
game, Thornton, keep Stripling on. Yeah.
Merryweather for 2, Thornton for 3, and figure out the rest, right? Like, and this would be a lot easier if Robbie Ray was taking regular turns and if Hatch was healthy. Man, if Patrick Murphy was healthy, who I think was going to be a part of this pitching staff this year, Nate Pearson, obviously. Like, the Blue Jays, like, pitching depth has thinned out rather quickly 6 days into the season, so it might be a little difficult to do now, but if they get to a point where they have more sort of arms ready to go on hand, May, June, July, you need to be looking for spots to get Hyun Jin Ryu a little bit more rest and to just actively manage his workload as the season goes on, because you're right, it's about late September, it's about mid-October. Like, that's when you want him to be peaking and like on point and ready to go every 5.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think it's just lip service when that goal is discussed, and certainly I'm sure Blue Jays fans are hoping it's not. So you actually have to plan for it. You can't just assume it's going to happen. So I think that's you can do that if they're proactive as far as getting some of that rest in.
Yes, absolutely. And that's going to be it for us this week on At the Letters. Want to thank our producers, Matt Collins and Mike Tassoni. That's Ben Nicholson-Smith. He's on Twitter at B.Nicholson-Smith. My name's Arden Zwelling. I'm on Twitter at Arden Zwelling. We'll talk to you next week on At the Letters.